Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guest, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight, we are going to be talking about end-of-life time, patient advocacy, how do we help and support our loved ones when they're in a time of crisis, a health event, end of life, or perhaps sudden death, sudden loss, sudden grief, or just feel like the world has ended, and maybe it has. How do we help support our loved ones? How do we help and support ourselves? What is the experience all about? What does it feel like, look like, to see a body, a human person, in their end of times, with medical interventions, with just disease, or perhaps within the death stages? Definitely hits us hard. Our own reality, our own survival, our own existence is at risk as we watch others go through these phases of time. How do we help support them within the healthcare system? This is the year 2022. It has changed so much, it's almost unrecognizable. I've been in healthcare for over 5 decades, and I can honestly tell you, I don't recognize it. And it is something that we have to engage with. It is something we have to find a way to navigate through, and we have to see it for what it is. Today, my guest is Melissa Mullamphy. Her book is Not in Vain, A Promise Kept. Melissa is going to be sharing her journey with her mother from disease onset, how she navigated through the healthcare system, definitely into the death process, and how she feels now coming out of it as not only someone who had a lot of loss, it was a lot of shock and trauma, definitely a lot of PTSD in this process, and how do we recover and heal and go on in our lives. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have you, Melissa. Don't you think that the processes that I've just spoken about, we almost feel like our head is spinning around in a circle because things have changed so much. We don't know where we're settling into, and we don't really know how to help.
That's exactly true. And, you know, when my mom first got diagnosed in 2010, the healthcare system was at a certain level. Now, roll the tape forward into 2022,
yes.
You know, I would have thought it would have gotten better, but it's only gotten worse. And it's a very scary time to get sick.
Yeah. You know, I look back on it, and I can definitely remember, you know, when I was a candy striper in the 60s, you know, life was so different, you know. It was happy and jolly, and you go into the hospitals, and everybody was helping each other. There would be a lot of family and friends there, and flowers and food, and it was almost as if you were, you know, leaving your home to get some help from some healthcare doctors and nurses, and everybody came and supported the process and encouraging in the health and healing system. But yet, and then, you know, they would take you home, and then everybody would come over, stay with you, and help you heal, and family was all around and everything. Let's fast forward into the 90s. Airplanes, internet, people don't even live by their relatives anymore, you know. If you get sick, it's sort of like, do I need to really come? Or someone's getting ready to pass away, they'll say, well, just let me know when they do, and I'll come for the funeral. And I'm going, whoa, what the heck happened to us, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I found it, you know, part of my book and part of what we did with my family when my mom was sick was, you know, my sister and I particularly, and my dad, my mom was an inpatient probably once a month, and we would work shifts as far as, when we showed up. If my sister was there during the day, I would get there at night. My dad might be there during the day. Like, honestly, today, if you don't have someone as an advocate, a family member, a loved one, a friend, it can be a little scary, and it definitely is very overwhelming.
Yeah, I think that life has transitioned to where people are leaving this earth alone. Let's look at the last 2 years. You had to get dropped off at a hospital, and you did die alone. Sorry, you did. Mm-hmm. But I think the idea is that we always say we're attached to a loved one and we want to be there because we're part of them. Let's talk about that for a second, Melissa, because when we're part of them, we take on their feelings, their emotions, their hurts and their pains, and we try to become the voice for them. Isn't that truly what a lot of advocates have been trying to do?
Yeah, that is exactly what me and my sister did. My sister and I have different personalities. My sister was, I would say, a little more patient, a little more conservative. On the other hand, with me, I'm more of a let's get this stuff going. Why isn't this done? Why isn't that done? We kind of were, a zing and a zang, but as a team, we worked very well together. It's definitely, a necessary thing.
I think the idea is that over the 50s, 60s, when our elders grew up, so if you've got a grandfather, grandmother, or parents, and you're now helping them through this process, they were always of the essence of knowing that you go to the doctor or the hospital, you don't ask questions. You have nothing to say. You let the medical profession take care of you. And I have always spoken about this on the show over the last decade, is that concept has come up in human history way back at the onset of antibiotics. People kind of always took care of themselves. They roughed, they survived, they didn't, whatever. But then antibiotics came along, and it was a miracle drug. So people went to the doctor and said, hey, doc, I got this. Doc will give you something, fix you, and, hey, save your life.
Right.
And in essence, right there, that concept is where medicine has gone wrong. We have gone wrong. Patients have gone wrong because we have that mantra stuck in our head that we will be saved, period.
Right.
Do you think perhaps that's truly what you've seen in your book? Not in vain, is that you were really trying to help your mother through the process. But we still, and I'm sure your mother had it tattooed on her head, all of you and your relatives did too, is that you still believe that, yes?
Yeah, no, we went in, ovarian cancer for women. They call it the silent killer for a reason, because a lot of times when it's diagnosed, it's staged out. My mom was, and I found this through research, she was part of the silent generation.
Yes.
And it was very interesting because I find both my parents are, and, they're not so trusting in doctors as the generations around them. And, my mom hadn't gone to a gynecologist since she had me. So, and roll the tape forward, all of a sudden she's getting a distended belly, and, she calls me and, we go to the emergency room. I'm playing doctor, of course. I think that, maybe she's obstructed, no big deal, we'll get a surgery.
Right.
Maybe it's diverticulitis. Never did I imagine it would be a 23-centimeter mass. And, you do, with that kind of diagnosis, especially like you said with technology today, first thing you do is, before you can actually get a specialist appointment, you start going crazy on the internet, finding everything out possible about ovarian and staging and specialties and holistic medicine and Western medicine and, 5-year survival rates. I mean, that was what I was doing. And, before we finally met with a gynecologist, oncologist. And, I have to say, with all the doctors that we went through the process, and I kept all their names, I didn't say their names for a reason, but the one that was always correct and on point was the one that in the beginning my sister and I called the Grim Reaper, because every appointment we had with her, it was always, this isn't a friendly cancer. She never gave us false hope. And
right.
At the time when we were going through it, I got mad at her for that. I didn't like her for that, because
yes.
I felt like she was like gloom and doom. But in the end, in retrospect, every hypothesis that woman had was true. Everything that she thought could happen did happen. Every side effect my mother could get, she got. And to this day, I'm still trying to find her. She was amazing. She's left the hospital, but, it just goes to show you that, and then, you look on the other side of that, you have the oncologist who, their treatment of choice is a platinum chemo. And, as you know, with cancer, they kind of pigeonhole you. Okay, you have this, so this is the treatment. And, you'll read in the book that we found out, so many mistakes, but one of the biggest mistakes was they treated her with the wrong chemo. She had a sarcoma. They were treating her not for a sarcoma. So she did 3 months before surgery chemo to, quote-unquote, shrink the mass, and it didn't touch it. It just made a sicker lady sicker. But, to get back to your question, you go to the doctor with the hope and the prayers and the feeling and the, you lay at their feet like, please help save my mother. And
right.
you just go through every day, with that hope. But when things happen like happened to my mom, month after month, mistake after mistake, you start to lose that confidence, and that's exactly what happened to me. Eventually she succumbed to the disease, but it took me a long time to reconcile that I think no matter what we did, that the cancer was too aggressive and it would have taken her. But where I still, and to be totally transparent, where I still harbor resentment is that, did she have to suffer the way she did because they made mistakes? And that's where I still have anger, and that's why at the end of each chapter I make sure I include everything that I learned in that month of the 8 months battle with the cancer, and what I suggest other people that are going through the same process. It doesn't have to be cancer. It could be diabetes, could be renal failure, could be heart disease. It doesn't matter. It all applies. Like I wrote in a blog yesterday something that sounds like simple, but it's not. And an example, being discharged out of the hospital, the nurse says she called in the prescriptions to the local pharmacy. For my mom's case, she was on nausea medicine and pain medicine. And in where I live in New York State, especially with narcotics, it has to be done right. And, I write in the book, make sure you leave that floor with a hard copy script, because even if the nurse says she called it in or the administrator says they called it in, I can't tell you how many times we went to the local pharmacy and it wasn't there. And then you can't find the doctor. The doctor that prescribed it is gone. They left the floor. You're not getting in touch with them until tomorrow, if that. So little things are important, and that's what I tried to share in the book. And there's a lot of little things.
I think when we talk about mistakes or processes within the healthcare system and how to navigate them, you and I could probably talk for, I've got over 5 decades. We could probably talk forever.
Days.
But, but the idea is that we have to realize and definitely come to a source that everyone's doing their best. Because right now the world is in chaos. Right now society is in chaos. everything is in turmoil. So that's when truly advocates are at their best, because they're able to say, I will try and help you navigate. However, you always have to put the stipulation on there. This does not mean your quality of life is going to be great. Does not mean I'm going to save you. Does not mean you are going to survive this. It means I will help you to the best of my ability also. Because I think also, too, you know, as you went through the process about being an advocate for your mother, is that you don't want to end up carrying grief, guilt, shame, PTSD, and all of the regrets by the process, because that in a way will suck you dry. You will almost die yourself, which you almost did, as you share your story in the book. And what will happen then is, are you of any help to anyone else, including yourself? And then now, when your loved one has passed on and you come to the edge of the death door with them, you have a choice. You can go through the death door too, or you can find a new way of living. And that's what you had to do, is find a new way of living. But let me tell you, I can count so many advocates that got to that death door and they said, you know what? Their soul said, I'm going too, and they left.
Yeah, no, I can't do that.
Right.
But you're right though. I mean, there were times that, you know, lots of times throughout, you know, after she passed, that, you know, people saw what was going on with me. People, close friends, family, you know, there was definitely a concern. But, you know, I just, you know, again, fancy degree, I just wasn't listening to anybody. I was textbook PTSD, depression, anxiety, you know, you name it. I was it. But, you know, I wasn't listening to anybody. And, you know, I did soften up a little bit in the book, you know, after some time had gone by, just even the job of an oncologist. And, you know, I would say they probably have one of the toughest specialties in the world, because, you know, with lousy cancer, they have to look kids, families, spouses, brothers, sisters in the face every day. And it's not like, you know, we're going to do a bypass and you're going to be fine. It's like, you know, we're going to try this and hope for the best, because as we know, everybody's body reacts differently to cancer treatment. So I did recognize that over time, but it took me a long time to do it. And, you know, it's just, you know, there's one thing in the book that, you know, that was a real bad thing, is that, you know, my mom had got optimally debulked, which is, you know, their speak for, you know, getting everything. It was a 9-hour surgery. The day before the surgery, the surgeon came in and she said, you know, Melissa, I feel like it's going to be palliative. And I'm like, whoa, what are you telling me this now at 9:30 when she's a 6 o'clock case? And, you know, but she said, you know, she was a great doctor. And she said, if you see me in an hour, that means we opened her, we closed her, and there's nothing we can do. If you're waiting longer than that, then, you know, we're trying our best. And they came out 9 hours later, and they had gotten everything except microscopic. And even the doctors were crying, because my mom had a very rare and aggressive case. So she did she had the surgery. She was in ICU. She went into patient rehab. But afterwards, they said they were going to do quote-unquote cleanup chemo, 4-day inpatient. I was at work. My sister was watching my son, and she went over and she texted me, and the subject, the text said, "Effing terrible." And so I Googled the chemicals they were using on my mom, because I knew it, because I wrote everything down. And I had a great boss. I had great company, and they said, whenever you need to leave, and I can't thank them enough. So I went to the hospital. It was a Friday. It was a long weekend to Labor Day. And I took one look at my mother, and I said, she's toxic, just from reading the internet. And her oncologist was off campus. I drove over there. I told the nurse, I said, please have him come to my mom's bed. I think she's toxic, et cetera, et cetera. He came in right before he was leaving. He said, she wasn't toxic. For Connie, we're going for cure. We have to be aggressive. My mom opened one eye and said, okay, let's do the second round. Next morning, I get a call from the nurse. That's why I say befriend all your nurses, because they are so important. She called me up. She said, Melissa, she goes, I'm not comfortable hanging this bag and doing this order. That's not the Connie that I know. Please get here. So I got there. Her regular oncologist was gone for the weekend. One of his colleagues came in. We got the same speech. She's fine. Hang the bag. This is just all part of it. And, at that point, we did have some white coat syndrome, and we said, okay, my mom agreed, and after that, it was just lights out. Terrible. She was poisoned. Right. I couldn't leave. My sister and I stayed there for the entire weekend. And Monday at 5:00, her oncologist came walking in the door. The priest had been there twice. He came in at 5:00 and he looked at me and he said, "You're right. She was toxic." And at that minute, I just said, "Who is the professional here?" I said, right. "I Googled it. How can you tell me this now?" And when you look at her medical file, it said, patient had ifosfamide toxicity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But again, we don't have a lot of time, but that took 3 weeks of her life. I mean, for 3 weeks after that chemo, she did nothing but, there was one point I found her flat, throwing up. She could have aspirated. It was a disaster for 3 weeks, and she doesn't even remember any of it. She was hallucinating. It was terrible. And I think that, after looking at her pathology and everything that she had, I think that the cancer was going to take her anyway. But that toxicity and being poisoned took any hope from her at that time, because after that it was just all downhill for her mentally and for her physically.
Do you think, Melissa, that what the hardest point of anyone watching someone pass on or through any disease or at any crisis in their life is watching the process? Because we always want to believe it could be a good life, a good death. We want it to be a certain way. And when it isn't, it challenges our own emotions, our own feelings of how things should be. And it really shatters our heart, because we really feel we can't help, we can't fix it, we can't, whatever you want to put there. And we just have to watch the process. And I think when we watch the process, we become angry because we feel we don't have the power. But isn't that when faith and hope have to come into the process? When you have to say, I know they're going to a better place. I know this is going to be okay. I know their spirit and soul may have already left. I know it's okay. And that's when you have to, you really come to a very conditioned place where you're able to see love unconditionally. You're able to see them as a soul and a spirit versus the human vehicle of the body that's left or that's in turmoil. That's a very difficult place to be. I can honestly say it takes many times for you to go through this process. It takes many times for you to be able to become, it's not even numb to it. It's being aware of it and supporting it and the people around.
Right.
That is a very finessed kind of place to be as an advocate. But when you're an advocate in the beginning, forget it. Not going to happen. You're going to go through all the ugliness, don't you think?
Oh, sure. No, I mean, just in what you just said is so true, because, I mean, I can tell you the state I was in when she was going through it. There were. I mean, I'm a fast talking New Yorker. We do things bang 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 bang. I work downtown.
Right.
you know, and there were some times when I'd go into my mom's room and she'd take one look at me, and if something wasn't right, or maybe an IV wasn't turned on, or maybe she didn't get her meds, she'd just look at me and say, Melissa, you know, don't start. You know, but I was almost on that constant fight. It was always like, it seemed like if something could go wrong, it went wrong. And in order to fix it, it was a fight. And I lived that way for a very long time. And it's only been recently where I've had to accept it, and I can actually have a conversation with it like I'm having with you without breaking down. And I can tell you, again, with all my, fancy degrees, it almost destroyed me. It came close to destroying me, you know, and then what would I be for my son, or what would I be for my husband, or, you know, whoever else is around me, you know?
Yeah. Let's take a break for a moment, and we will be right back.
Today we discuss many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page, or visit dr.jeanette-gallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.
And it's so vitally important, Melissa, that we really recognize your path you were on, because that is a soul journey. Everyone is going through something or something. In the past 10 years it started, and if we recognize that, we say, okay, they're having this experience. Doctors are really crushing right now. They're having a big experience. So are nurses. Yeah. So are patients. So are advocates. So are loved ones. So are people who had to drive their loved ones to the hospital and leave them off at the emergency room door and never see them again and not know that.
Yeah.
If we can understand everybody's doing the best that they possibly can, and step there and say, I know there's more to this world than this human vehicle, my soul, my spirit. How can I engage in that? And I think that's how we can start connecting with them. I know that anger is a huge block. It shuts the door and it says, I'm defined by this story. So then when we get stuck in that, we need to use it for a while as a tool. But once we can get past that, can we let it go? Because that will end up being then your next journey, or your next wall to hit, or your next PTSD that may take you out. And we're trying to help people to open up in awareness. Isn't that why you wrote the book?
Yes, absolutely. That was the whole goal. I mean, to be honest, I mean, my dad and my sister weren't really, you know, that supportive of the book initially because, you know, they didn't want it out there. But, you know, after a couple conversations, you know, my dad finally got it. You know, like, Dad, this is not, you know, to air our dirty laundry. This is my whole goal in putting this out there is to help others so they don't have to suffer like Mommy did, you know, and you know, then it clicked. You know, the same goes for my sister. You know, I mean, I know for a fact that we had a medical malpractice suit, but they didn't want to do it, and I get that because money wasn't going to bring her back. But, you know, I just, again, my goal, it's not anything monetary. It's just, you know, the attempt to try and help people, you know, understand what their rights are, you know, how to find their voice, and, you know, everything in between. You know, one other thing that I found very important is, again, and if you've had a sick person that you've visited frequently, you know, as a family member or as a friend, when you're sitting, you know, spending a couple hours in the hospital, the nurses do rounds every hour. Sometimes it's not the nurse, it's the aide that just comes in and takes vitals. I know, especially with my mother with cancer, I know if she had breakfast and lunch and only drank half of a Boost, because, with cancer, the wasting disease is a real issue. And, I know if she had breakthrough nausea and didn't call the nurse because that's just her way. I know if she couldn't ambulate to the bathroom, this was what was great about the oncologist, gynecologist, is that she actually sat down and spoke to us. And that's what I tell people, that even though you're not on the hospital payroll, if you have someone that's critically ill and you're sitting there with them, you're just as much a part of the patient team as they are. In fact, there are things that these doctors need to know and they don't know because you either don't tell them or they don't ask. And things like, when kitchen services comes through and just empties the tray and you have someone with cancer and wasting disease, it's important to know what the calorie intake is. They don't know that unless you tell them, So I was able to, it took a long time and a lot of energy and a lot of conversations with the actual on-staff patient advocate. But, if the multidisciplinary is they're meeting about my mom's case every 2 weeks, how about giving a family member 5 minutes in the beginning just to let them know our observations, not to take their job, not to think that we're suddenly a doctor, but things that can help treat the whole patient versus just what they do. This is a silly thing, but I remember when my mom first got sick, her generation, with healthcare benefits, and she needed blood transfusions. She asked, how much does blood cost? And I'm like, Ma,
right.
Don't worry about it, but if doctors know that there's stress maybe financially, if they know that, there's significant depression, if, my mom's not getting out of the bed when she's not in the hospital, her calorie intake is maybe a Boost a day, and that's pushing it. We've tried everything possible. They need to know those things. It's very important. How are they with med compliance? All those things are important. And if you have the opportunity, you need to let them know. And if you don't have the opportunity, find it.
Absolutely. And I think also, too, to be able to speak up no matter what. A lot of times people will say, oh, my gosh, this lady's back and she's a constant complainer. And, I've always used the words when I get in those confrontation situations, and I would state my facts, whatever it was, and at the end I would say, and I thank you so much for trying to help me, because it's not about you, it's about the process. I'm having trouble with the process.
Yeah,
and
I say that all the time.
Yep, if we really understand that, because we don't want to, in turn, hurt other people also in their own spirit and soul. We certainly don't want to do that. So if we're able to say, this doctor whatever or the nurse whatever, the nurse might be doing it because she's following orders, and we say, we're really angry or whatever, and we say, but it's not you. I understand. It's the process.
Right.
Do you think we can separate that out?
Yeah, no, you have to. I've always done that. Like I say in the book, my feeling is nurses are the connective tissue that make the hospital run. And that's why I say befriend your nurses and, do it, have conversations with them. I mean, I myself was hospitalized last October. It was a crazy event where it's called gastric volvulus. My stomach decided to rip off my spleen and I was bleeding to death. It's a long story. Woke up 2 days later in ICU, and this was at the end of 2020. So the nurses had gone through a lot of the COVID stress. And, I was there 11 days and, I could see it And you know, I would speak to them and just see what they were going through and what they went through, and they would share their stories with me. And my God, I mean, we have I don't want to say it, I guess I could say a generation of nurses right now that are really hurting and deserve better. You know, they really deserve better, and it's sad to see, especially what they had to do as far as being the connectivity between, you know, a loved one and someone dying using, you know, a device to say goodbye. I mean, the PTSD these nurses have is very sad. And now with, you know, I just blogged about it, everybody going to the emergency room to get a COVID test because they can't get one anywhere else. You know, I was recently in an ER because I fell in the snow, something silly, and they were triaging patients out in the waiting room because there's no beds, and these nurses are getting beat up. I mean, they're getting it from all ends, and I just felt really bad for them because it's just the world we live in right now. And, you know, you can get mad that you sat there 8 hours, but it's not the nurses doing, it's the system, you know?
Absolutely. Well, Melissa, it was great to talk to you today because I think so many times people are saying, I don't know what's going on, but I need to be able to fix this. And they're really bucking up against the system in the last few years especially. And I think where we're coming to, and perhaps you will come on the show again another time to talk about, is how can we start to look at humans as their soul and their spirit versus this human experience? Because you know what? It hasn't changed. It's getting a little bit harder day by day. And if we understand that, maybe then we can help the soul and the spirit navigate through it, and we will be okay. And we won't leave a lot of hurt people behind, a lot of people with horrible grief and anger. We will help people pass through this door with a little bit kinder and a little bit more loving time, yes?
Yeah, that's all very necessary. And in just the brief conversation that we've had, I think we both are very much alike. And again, we could probably talk for hours, but you really hit the nail on the head with what my process was. And it probably took me longer than the average person just because of how I'm wired. But it took a long time to again, be even able to have this conversation.
And it's so vitally important to honor the feelings that you're having. If you have rage, if you have despair, own it. Say, just get out my way, this is bad. And own it and sit in it and be with it. So many people want to say, oh, but you don't need to hold on to it, Well, if you need to hold on to it until it passes through and you work with that, then that's what you need to do, because stuffed up emotions end up somewhere else all the time. So I think the idea is that how can we be real? How can we understand what others are going through and also understand our own hurts and pains in watching the process? It's very devastating, I think, to be able to see the process, yes?
Yeah, and I can say that especially in the beginning, I say it in the book, I was not fun to be around. I mean, my husband I've been with the same man. He was my high school sweetheart. I mean, he stuck around, and I wasn't pleasant. I remember I'd show up at my job at 10:30, and I remember one colleague saying, "What are you on, banker's hours?" And I just didn't care. I mean, I remember once telling my boss in a meeting, "You're annoying." Like, I just didn't care. It was just, I was so full of anger, but I was pushing that onto other people that didn't deserve it, and I did apologize to all of them. In fact, a lot of my colleagues at work, especially the ones that supported me through my worst, I sent them books and thank you cards with my Christmas card because, through their mentoring and through their not giving up on me was a big component that got me through. And you don't find a lot of people that work in corporations like that. I was very lucky.
It definitely is about finding someone to be able to walk the path with you. There's so many people alone these days. How can you find an advocate, a loved one, a relative, coworker, or maybe even just a neighbor to be able to help you through the process of walking to death's door. I think that's very scary. Some people will go running. Some people will say, this is not for me. But definitely you and I, as we're sharing, we've done it. We've been there, and we're okay, and we can help. And that's what we want people to do, is say, I need help in this process, instead of, the other, there isn't help, but there is.
God, yeah. And again, the story about my neighbor, I mean, he was going anyway, but, but just trying to make that process a little easier, a little less painful, it was that was very important to me, because I couldn't stand how he was without that.
Mm-hmm. And also,
and he was alone.
And also, to be able to validate that other people's processes, while they may not look right, while they may be riddled with all kinds of issues and judgments, it is not for us to judge and put our expectations on them. So many times people will say, it's unacceptable that they didn't get a bath today. It's unacceptable that their sheets weren't changed. It's unacceptable that you didn't pick them up and carry them and help them walk today. That's your judgments and your ideas and beliefs. And when we see the picture of a healthy loved one in our minds, and we look at the human that's in front of us today, it's very, very difficult to accept.
Yes, that's for sure. Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely for sure. And, again, even with, what's going on, like in my state, if it's even harder. And I just I get a lot of medical journals and stuff, and I got one of the nurse journals recently, and, with still the pandemic and inability to visit patients in hospitals, whether you're vaccinated or not, that's a big problem, and that's putting a lot more work to the nurses, and it's just, they just can't get a break. They just, because, sometimes, I mean, most of the time a nurse is going to be happy that you're there, unless you're, a nudge, but, you can make that walk to the nursing station and ask for something if, the nurse didn't get to you or whatever, but, without that person, because you're not allowed in, it's just very scary. Like when I had that emergency surgery, and I just remember it was something out of Grey's Anatomy. They put the hat on me. I had nurses on each side of me putting IVs. They were running me down the hallway, and my husband and my son couldn't be there. And the last thing I remember is the doctor saying to me, "Do you want to be resuscitated?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I just said to him, I said, "Please call my husband," because I didn't even get a chance to speak to him before I went into the OR. That's the type of emergency it was. And, it was scary. Like it was very traumatizing. Thank God they put me out quickly.
Yeah. It definitely is about the human experience, is what we're talking about today. And I think, Melissa, that it's riddled with so much emotions, so much pain and struggle, and we just want to hold on to the joy and the love, and it's sometimes so very hard. So I really thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, not only with your mother's experiences, but with yours also, because, as I've said, over the 5 decades, I've seen it so much that you have to come to some sort of space and time to be able to reckon in your own heart and soul about the process.
Yes, we do, and I very much appreciate you having me on, and I would love to continue to speak to you in the future, because just in this hour and 14 minutes, I think you've been very helpful to me, and I appreciate that.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, Melissa. Can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your book?
Sure. My website is www.melissamullamphy.com, Mullamphy, spelled Mullamphy. The book is also available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Books, Apple, all over the place. But I do try and blog daily on different emerging issues, a lot of healthcare stuff, a lot of patient advocacy trends, and I also have, write some newsletters as well that I try and just keep writing and on things that are going on to try and help anybody that is a follower.
Very good. Well, Melissa, it was such a pleasure to have you with us. You definitely will be on in the future shows, and it was such a great time to be able to say that we are aware, we are watching out for you. Even if you think your journey is hard, there are people out there to ask for help, yes?
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. And thank you for all you've done.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, perfect. Well, you have a great day, and I appreciate it.
If you'd like to find out more information about Melissa Mullamphy, again, the book is Not in Vain, A Promise Kept. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to her website for more information and check out her daily blog. And it truly is about being able to say, can you find the heart, the soul, and the spirit that will be able to help you walk home, walk through the process of life, and be able to say, we got this. You're going to be okay. Just extend a hand, a heart, a kind smile, just a moment in time. Be in the present with your loved ones, because that's pretty much all we've been guaranteed. Everything else is just this human story that we've been given, and we seem it's like it's going to be okay because we are expecting it. When things go wrong, it's okay. Just do what you can, do the best you can, and be in loving kindness. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher. Until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit dr.jeanette-gallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.